Hello, and welcome to our presentation, Supporting Remote Users, a Guide for Reference Librarians. In this presentation, we will discuss several elements of remote library user support, including history of remote user services, remote user needs and expectations, the changing landscape of remote user services, an overview of some technological tools currently available for remote user support, steps that can be taken to improve or enhance remote users' library experiences, and also the role of the Library Remote Services Coordinator. When considering the concept of remote user services, it may be helpful to remember that remote user services are nothing new. Libraries have been communicating remotely with their patrons for decades via postal mail, telephone, and even with remote outreach services like bookmobiles and materials delivery services to homebound patrons. So, remote user services are nothing new. However, it should also come as no surprise that remote user services are currently changing in new and dramatic ways. Remote user services are changing dramatically at present as more and more library patrons have access to internet-connected computers, and as more and more library resources become available remotely by way of online databases, OPACs, and more. Computers and mobile internet-enabled devices, together with new interactive and adaptive software programs, instructional platforms, and content delivery systems, are changing the landscape of remote user services like at no time in the history of libraries to date. Of course, with these changes come evolving remote user needs and expectations. First and foremost, remote library users expect convenience. This expectation takes a number of different forms. For one user, it might mean the expectation of the ability to access robust library materials and resources, all from a remote location. For example, access to full-text documents online, such as ebooks, electronic journal articles, and database contents in full text. For another, it might mean having an easy, intuitive way to ask for help from a library professional while accessing library resources from home. However it manifests, remote users desire and expect convenience. On a related note, remote users want and expect a level of service equal to that received by on-site users. Libraries are finding a number of ways to meet this demand, several of which will be touched upon later. One area in which this comes into play is the realm of technical support. Because remote users often have less access to technical support than on-site users, libraries are finding creative ways to bridge that gap. One of the ways this gap is bridged is through the use of technological tools for the purposes of instruction and support. The list of technological tools that can be used to support libraries' remote user populations and to enhance access and quality of experience is long and continually growing. While the World Wide Web, the OPAC, and the library website serve as a gateway into the library from remote locations, other options abound as to how to instruct and engage with users remotely. To name just a few of these software programs and services, first we'll talk about ScreenCam, Camtasia, and Prezi. Each of these products facilitates the creation and distribution of virtual presentations which allow for the conduction of asynchronous remote instruction sessions. The products do differ in their features and focuses. For example, ScreenCam and Camtasia focus on software demonstrations and simulations by way of the capture and enhancement of real-time screen activity, whereas Prezi's focus is on the creation of compelling audiovisual presentations. However, what these all have in common is their emphasis on remote, asynchronous learning support for computer users, and for this reason they are all valuable resources for librarians, especially those who work with remote populations. Whether it be to create a screen capture of the step-by-step process of accessing the library's OPAC or databases, to walk a patron virtually through the steps needed to download a piece of software such as Adobe Acrobat Reader, which may be needed to view the full-text versions of library e-resources, or for any other computer-based user instruction, ScreenCam, Camtasia, and Prezi can all be highly useful resources. Next, there are pathfinders, also known as libguides. Pathfinders are a common resource created by librarians for the support of remote users. Pathfinders are typically web pages. They can also be in print, but for the sake of this presentation we'll refer to them as web pages since we're focusing on remote users, which are typically focused around a specific topic or theme and contain links, references, or directions to widely used and authoritative resources on the chosen topic. LibGuides is one popular branded platform for the creation of electronic pathfinders. Pathfinders are especially useful for remote users because a librarian may not be available to walk a patron through the research process in real time, but by the use of the Pathfinder, he or she can provide virtual reference guidance on the patron's schedule and at the patron's speed. Finally, there are several other more generally used and not necessarily library-specific technologies for remote user interaction that libraries have adopted to strong effect. These are synchronous internet conferencing, also known as web chat or instant messaging, email, and text messaging. Many of us already use one or more of these methods on a daily basis for personal or professional communication. They are also increasingly used by library reference staff to answer remote user queries, whether these be ready reference or research questions, troubleshooting, or any other matter about which a patron might approach a reference desk or a reference librarian during an on-site visit. Besides the use of the above-listed resources, there are still other things that libraries can do to improve and enhance remote user experiences. One thing that a library can do is to hire a remote library coordinator, or alternatively to incorporate remote services coordination into the job descriptions of several existing staff members. This will be touched upon further in the following slide. Another relatively simple and not too expensive measure that can be taken to enhance remote users' experiences is to organize information as carefully and as intuitively as possible on the library's website in order to maximize the chance that a remote user will be able to find what it is that he or she is looking for, with a minimum of headaches or unnecessary obstacles. Systems librarians or library information technology specialists can do their best to make sure that the library website is as user-friendly as possible to the greatest possible number of remote users. Among the contributions that can be made by a library remote user services coordinator are creating and maintaining remote instruction tutorials, as for example through Camtasia or ScreenCam, for promoting available resources to remote users, and or increasing mobile accessibility through the development of library-related mobile apps, among many other possibilities. Thanks for joining us for our presentation on supporting remote library users. We realize that the constraints of the forum and venue have only allowed us to just scratch the surface of this topic, but we hope that this will spark your interest and give you some ideas for ways that you can expand upon your existing knowledge of remote user services and integrate this into your work as reference professionals. And in case you're thinking that computers and library websites are too self-explanatory and that remote users are just not in need of any specialized guidance, we leave you with this quotation. Thank you.